Here is our final lesson in Unit 1, and it's going to be a bit of a doozy, a longer one, because we're going to talk about proteins. And proteins can get pretty darn complex. So, first, before we can go into the structure of proteins, let's look in a little more detail at the monomer of proteins. So, an amino acid has a central carbon. That central carbon has 4 things coming off of it because carbon forms 4 bonds. Not as important a thing to remember for the AP test. So one of the things that comes off is a hydrogen atom. That's on every single amino acid. Then every amino acid has an amine group on one end and a carboxyl group on the other end. The carboxyl group is a C double bound to an oxygen with an OH. It's sometimes called a COOH group. The amine group is an NH2. And just keep in mind that with the nitrogen here and the oxygen here, there is the possibility to form some polar bonds. Then every amino acid, and there are 20 major amino acids that are found in organisms, has a different R group. So this is called the variable group or a side chain, and it is different from one amino acid to another. We're going to look at those R groups on another slide, and I'll point out some of the structural differences. But I wanted to point out what is common between all of the amino acids first. Now, when we start assembling these monomers into polymers, we get a linear chain of amino acids. The peptide bond, which is the bond that's formed between them, forms between the carboxyl group of one amino acid and the amine group of the other amino acid. So the carboxyl group is what gives the acid part of the name amino acid, and the amine group is what gives the amine name. And then this is also called a peptide chain. Just to look at a longer peptide chain, I wanted to show you kind of how you can see the individual amino acids in here. So I've highlighted here the central carbon atoms. Then these are the amine groups. And then these are the carboxyl groups. And then these are just kind of basic generic representations of R groups, which would be different for each amino acid. Because as we look at protein structure, we're going to start kind of zooming out and not focusing as much on what's on the individual amino acids until, well, we'll get there, but let's first talk about the side chains because the R groups are going to be very important. R groups come in 3 different types. They can be hydrophobic or nonpolar, same thing. They can be hydrophilic or polar, same thing, and they can be ionic. And based on the properties of the side chain, that's going to affect the structure and the function of any given region of a protein. It is the interactions between these hydrophilic and polar parts, or ionic bonds formed between the ionic groups, or even just the properties of the hydrophobic side chains that help a protein fold into its 3-dimensional shape. So you don't have to memorize the 20 amino acids. You don't even need to memorize which ones have which properties. The most important thing that I wanted to point out is I wanted to show you that the structure of these amino acids is pretty much the same with the exception of this variable group. So the variable group can be anything as simple as just a hydrogen, or it can be a long chain. It can even be some ring structures as well. The important things to note are that the properties of these amino acids are going to be, these side chains are going to be important. So you have this group of non-polar amino acids. You have those with a positive charge, so these, and the negatively charged ones, these are the ionic side chains, and then you have the polar side chains as well. And that's going to become important when we talk about how a protein folds. So let's talk about protein structure. One of our common themes when we talk about molecules is going to be the structure of a molecule is going to help determine its function, and it's going to be very important, especially the 3-dimensional structure. So just wanted to show you there are some different ways to visualize the structure of a protein. One is a ribbon diagram, and I'm going to talk in more detail about these kind of curls and other aspects of the ribbon diagram, but it's good at showing you some of the structural elements that can make up a folded protein. Then you have a ball and stick model, which is very similar to the models that I made in class when you guys were looking at different biomolecules, macromolecules. This does show every single atom, but it can get a little busy. And then there's also the space filling model. This kind of shows what area this protein occupies. It's really good for showing kind of the 3D outer shape as well as places where things can bind. So there are 4 different levels of protein structure that we're going to learn about. Primary structure is the first level, and that's simply just the order of the amino acids. So what you see here is that this amino acid chain, whatever it is, starts with a glycine, then a proline, then a threonine, then a glycine, then a threonine, then a glycine, then a glutamate. So you can see that there are these different amino acids kind of strung together. And again, you don't need to memorize the properties of any of the side chains of these or which ones are polar or which ones are non-polar. The important thing to know is that the order of these amino acids is going to be really important for determining the final 3D structure of the protein. So that's the first level of protein structure. We have the secondary level of protein structure, which is some local folding that happens due to interactions between the polypeptide backbone of the amino acid chain. So this is not due to side chains. If you'll look at these diagrams right here, which shows the interactions between the backbone, and right here, which shows the interactions between the backbone, you'll notice there are no side chains there, but you can see some hydrogen bonds forming between like amine groups and these C's double bonded to O's. You can also see some hydrogen bonds between these amine groups and C's double bonded to O's, and just you can form these different arrangements. There are 2 major types of secondary structure that you need to know. One is the alpha helix, the other is the beta sheet, and I've got 2 different representations up here. So one, the ribbon diagram, which is really useful for showing you where those alpha helices are and where those beta sheets are. The alpha helices tend to be shown as like a curled ribbon, and the beta sheets tend to be shown as like these arrows showing the direction of the amino acid chain. And then you also have these diagrams that I put a box around. Those are more detailed, showing you how the actual hydrogen bonds are forming. You don't need to be able to look at a primary structure and know whether there are alpha helices or beta sheets. The most important thing to note is that when you have differences in pH, that can actually affect whether you have, these extra hydrogens kind of in some of these amine groups and other side chains, and that can affect hydrogen bonding, which can then affect the secondary structure of a protein. And if you mess up the secondary structure of a protein, you're going to mess up the function of a protein. So that's kind of a big deal. Another thing to note is that when you have a high temperature, molecules tend to move more, which means that can disrupt the hydrogen bonds, which again can mess with the structure of the protein, which can then destroy the function of the protein. Then we have the kind of overall 3D shape of the protein is determined by basically interactions between the side chains of the amino acids. This is tertiary structure, and so we have a couple of different types of side chain interactions that are going to form this tertiary structure. First is hydrogen bonding, which you see in this diagram, which is just showing you some examples of these type of interactions, and this is going to form between your polar or hydrophilic amino acid side chains. Then there are hydrophobic interactions, so there's not actually a bond between these 2 hydrophobic side chains. What ends up happening is they're excluded by the polar water molecules that are surrounding this, so they tend to cluster in the interior of proteins. This is really important because if you have some sort of mutation that changes the structure of a protein, and say this hydrophobic side chain got changed to a hydrophilic one, that would then change the 3D shape of the protein because this side chain would no longer be excluded, and so that would cause this protein to fold differently. Then you have ionic interactions. So here you have two ionic side chains that are going to be electrically attracted to each other with strong and form strong ionic bonds. And then the strongest side chain interaction of all is a disulfide bridge. So what happens is you have two cysteines, which are the amino acid that contains sulfur. They have two SH groups. And then what's going to happen is they'll form a chemical bond or a covalent bond that's going to remove these two hydrogens. And then these sulfurs are going to form a covalent bond. This is kind of almost like stapling or like super gluing parts of a protein together. Disulfide bridges are going to form the kind of strongest of these types of tertiary structure interactions. So they're going to be essential to holding the shape of a protein. And then the last level of protein structure is when you have more than one polypeptide chain. So here you see one single polypeptide chain. That is a covalently bound chain of amino acids. When you have interactions between more than one polypeptide chain, like what you see in this diagram right here, which is probably going to be hemoglobin because it's kind of the big example of quaternary structure or fourth level structure in a protein. Notice you have two of these chains. These two are identical, and then you have these other chains that have a slightly different structure, but they can form hydrogen bonds with each other. You might have some disulfide bridges, some ionic interactions that are going to attract those polypeptide chains and keep them forming this particular shape. And apparently my cat wants you to know that that's very important. So the four different levels of protein structure are all important for determining how the 3D shape is going to be, which is going to determine the function of a protein. So this is just a diagram showing you all four levels. You have your primary structure, which is just the chain of amino acids. Then that can fold into secondary structures, like this is an alpha helix, and then you can have some beta sheets elsewhere. The tertiary structure is going to be more of the 3D structure of the protein. And then finally, your quaternary structure is more than one polypeptide chain joined together. I want to point out, though, some proteins are going to stop here. If they don't have more than one polypeptide chain, then there won't be a quaternary structure. So that's something to keep in mind. All proteins have a primary structure, a secondary structure, and a tertiary structure. Not every protein has a quaternary structure. And then here's just a summary. Proteins do a whole lot of functions in the cell. They basically do everything except for storing energy and except for transmitting genetic information. Pretty much anything else, movement, enzymatic, like chemical reactions, forming structures, like the cytoskeleton, which we'll talk about later, is primarily composed of protein. That's all protein. Because they can take on a super huge variety of structures, which means they can also take on a huge variety of functions. They are found everywhere throughout the cell. They're found in the nucleus, helping to hold some 3D structures of of DNA together. They're found in the cell membrane, where they're going to help transport molecules across the membrane. They're just found everywhere in the cell. The monomer, of course, is amino acids, and some examples. There's hemoglobin. It's a pretty big example because it's the molecule that carries oxygen around in your blood. DNA polymerase and sucrase, those are both enzymes, which we'll talk about in more detail later, which you can tell from the name because they do end in ase. And then actin is a very important protein involved in the cytoskeleton. All right, and for some reason I thought this protein looked a little bit like a person, so I stuck my head on it. Next up will be Unit 2 notes.